Vairagya is translated variously as non-attachment, detachment, or dispassion. It should not be confused with indifference, lack of emotion, lifelessness, numbness, or anything of that sort. Vairagya is hardly indifference or numbness. Vairagya is a vibrant, open, expansive way of living. It would be more accurately described as love, as a wonderful energy of openness, freedom, joy, giving, selflessness, and fearlessness. That is Vairagya. The Vedantic philosophy of Vairagya says that you own nothing, so there is nothing to fear. Everything you need for the purpose of life is there in abundance. There is no reason to be possessive and selfish. There is no reason to worry. Just live life as fully as possible with what you have. Jesus said it clearly, take no thought of your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor for your body, what you shall put on. Is not life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much better than they? Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto this stature? And why not take you thought for a raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Therefore, if God so clothed the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast in the oven, shall he not more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? Your heavenly Father knows that you have need of all these things. But first seek the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. Don't fret over the things of the world. They are not there to be acquired and hoarded. They were meant to meet spiritual needs. If spiritual progress is the focus of life, everything you need, whether it is a lot or a little, will be there. Vairagya is an expression of this faith. Technically, the word vairagya means control over desires. As Buddha explained, desires are the cause of suffering in the world. Buddha meant desires in a broader sense of attachment as well. Desires hook and attach people to things and to others, making them dependent and defining the meaning of life. Suffering is the only result. Therefore, to rise above suffering, according to Buddha, rise above desires. To rise above desires sounds impossible, or not even healthy or human, but it is possible to control and transcend desires. In Vedantic philosophy, there is only one, pure consciousness, Atman, Brahman, or however it is defined. If that is true, then desires are irrelevant, because there is nothing to desire that is not already there. There is one who desires also what is desired. The reality of human existence is that as long as we don't fully identify ourselves with Atman, we will have desires. The route to Atman is through overcoming these desires. That requires Vairagya, which has 2 paths, the path of renunciation or the path of fulfillment and selfless action. There is also a third or middle path, which is to balance renunciation and fulfillment. From the book Sacred Journey by Swami Rana.
Thank you. I did remember the second thing. It is look for potentially a new schedule coming out in September. We're talking and confirming those things. So there could be a bit of a shift and change up in the schedule. So that could be happening as well. All right. So now we have, last week we were talking about how Mantara, who represents our own individual petty minds, and she was, she wanted to twist Kaike's mind, because this is that jealousy that within us, right? That little petty mindedness in us. And so when we have something inside of us that we're petty about, it's very easy for our intellect to be perverted. It's very easy for our intellect to become distorted. It's very easy for us to see the world as suddenly against us. So Mantara has successfully now, Kaike's on board. She's on board that if this happens, this is not a good thing. And the deciding factor was when Mantara was telling her that if this happens, you are going to have to be the maidservant to Kaushalya. So in Kaushalya, who is Rama's mother, she had always harbored this just a bit of jealousy. And that one little bit, right, that little mustard seed of jealousy was able to expand out and to become something so big. So this is where we need to be very cognizant of our feelings, of examine ourselves, right? Why would I be jealous? Why would I feel this way? Get into the root of those problems. So she knew that she had her on board, because up until when she was saying, "Oh, but Rama would be a great king. There's no reason to worry, that everything will be fine." But when Mantara said, "This will really impact you," then she changed, right? Because suddenly now, whoa, this is going to affect me. So let me rethink this. I don't want to be a maidservant, right? Her self-preservation, that egoic sense of I am a king's wife, let me never be a maidservant, came through with that jealousy. So now that since she's on board, Kaikeyi says, so how are we going to take care of this? How are we going to take care of this? And Kaikeyi, or Mantara, says, okay, I have a plan and it will work. And she said, do you remember the two boons that you were offered by King Dasharatha years ago? And Kaikeyi's like, oh, it was so long ago. Those. And she said, no. Those boons were offered to you by King Dasharatha because Kaikeyi was driving his chariot, and they were out on the battlefield and they were fighting demons. And she was such a good charioteer that she kept him safe in the battle. So King Dasharatha said, I'm giving you two boons for this. You can call on these anytime you want. Whatever you want, I will give it to you. So Mantara brings all of that back up. She says, he has to. He's a Kshatriya. He is a king. If he doesn't keep his word, he's nothing. Because being a king during that time and being a Kshatriya, warrior, right, warrior, that righteousness to it, if he doesn't keep his word, then there's nothing. There's nothing to him. And so Kaikeyi is like, okay. And she said, and the two boons you are going to ask for is one, that Bharata be installed, that he be crowned king. And two is that Rama be sent into the forest as an ascetic for 14 years. And she said, now Kaikeyi is really like, okay, Mantara is really on board, right? And this is what happens to us. We get petty about something, and then we come up with this plan. So Kaikeyi also represents Thomas, and that Thomas is that, I think, do I have that up there somewhere? I think I did. But it's that whole, she wants to destroy it. She wants destruction now at this point. And that's what happens. That's that tamasic energy. So not only am I being petty and am I being jealous, am I being whatever it is, that predominant emotion that's surfacing, then suddenly that tamasic, that, ooh, I just want to make them suffer. I just want to destroy, right? That comes to surface. So, Mantara says, okay, what you need to do is you need to go to the sulking room. So back during this time, the queens would have a sulking room, and the king would come to the sulking room. So if they were upset about something, the king would come to the sulking room and talk with them, and they would work on whatever the problem was. And she said, I want you to go to the sulking room, and I want you to take all of your fancy clothing off. I want you to put an old sari on. I want you to take your hair down. I want you to take all of your jewels off. I want you to just go into the sulking room, and I want you to wait for the king. So now her mind is completely completely twist it and distort it. And she is so angry and so agitated, right? That's what happens. Something, a little bit of something, this little tiny seed gets inside of us. And then suddenly, a year later, we're still angry about what happened. We're still agitated about what happened. We're still holding on to that, whatever happened. So this is, once again, we're looking at all of this within ourselves. So think about something that has happened, right? And it got you just a little bit, but the more you thought about it, it got a much bigger hold on you. It just grabbed you and seized you, and you want it to just turn everyone against whatever it was, or you want it, however you want it to create destruction for that situation or for that person. So now this is what's happening with Kaikei. She's 100% on board. So now the king is coming, and everything is taken care of in the kingdom, and all the arrangements have been made. The only thing they have left to do is the actual coronation, which will happen in the morning. So Kaikei was always his favorite of his wives. She was the one that he always wanted to just share the special downtime with. So he's on the way to her palace, and he gets through, and he's walking through the garden, and he's just amazed at the beauty in the garden. He's just astounded. He's like, whoa, this is so incredible. It's as if every flower has opened up to see Rama become king tomorrow. Everything is just perfect here. And he's walking through the garden, and he's so amazed at just the beauty of the garden. And so he's looking out, and usually Kaikei runs to greet him when he walks into the door, and she's nowhere to be found. And he goes into the inner chambers, and Mantara is there, and she explains that she's in the sulking room. And so he's like, oh, okay. So he immediately goes to the sulking room. So before we get to the sulking room, if we think about when we're happy, everything in the world looks happy, right? If we feel like everything is going perfect for us, suddenly the sky is beautiful, that everything is just magical, everything is just perfect, right? We see beauty everywhere when we feel like everything is just going right along with us. Suddenly when things don't go with us, then there's beauty nowhere. So that was his mind. His beloved Rama is going to be crowned king. Everyone's on board with this. Everyone is just as excited as him. So, of course, the mind, right? Everything then looks beautiful to us. Once again, think about this in your own personal life. When things are going great in your life, perceived great, right? Because we live in this world of duality, and until we get out of that duality, we will perceive things as great. We will perceive things as not so great. So when it's these things that are perceived as great, then suddenly everywhere we look, everything is just wonderful. So that's what was happening to him. So now he gets into the sulking room, and he sees his beautiful queen. She's just thrown herself on the floor, and her hair's all disheveled, and she just looks a mess. And he says, what has happened? What is wrong? Tell me what is going on here. Who has wronged you? What is this? Tell me, I will take care of it. Did someone say something untoward to you? He goes through this whole list of things that could be happening to her. And she's just completely listless. And he says, please tell me. I can take care of anything. I will do anything. Whatever it is, I will take care of it. So now she perks up. And that's the other thing too, right? When the world is going with us, so to speak, we think we can handle anything. We think, oh, we can just take care of whatever it is. We tend to go into that I'm invincible mode until something comes by and just like slaps us down, and then we realize, oh, no, I'm not invincible. That was just my ego being very, very much full of pride. And so, but now he has her attention, and she says, you will do anything? And he says, yes, of course. What is it? Please tell me. And she said, do you remember the 2 boons that you gave me on the battlefield when I saved your life, when I drove your chariot? He says, yes, of course. She says, can I call on those two boons? Of course you can. Of course you can. So she immediately says, okay, I want one, for Bharata to be made king, and two, I want Rama to be sent into the forest as dressed as an ascetic for 14 years. And it just feels like the air, everything is just taken out of him. And he falls down to his knees and he says, Bharata can be made king. No question. But no, please, please don't make me send Rama away. Please don't make me do that, because if he goes, my life will end. I cannot bear to be away from him. And now at this point, she just becomes very, whatever. You can't do this. You can't follow through. You can't honor the two boons that you made. So you can only honor one of them. You're impotent as a king. You're impotent as a Kshatriya. You're nothing. And he's looking at her. He's like, what is this? This is not my wife. You've become a demoness. This is not what is happening? And she just has nothing, nothing to look at him. She just is disgusted with him. But this is, once again, anger can completely change who we are. You can see someone and you can see on their face, right, that their face is just contorted with anger or with sadness or with jealousy or with lust, whatever it is. You can just see it all over their face. And you're like, whoa, you can feel it from them. So suddenly now, just in that short of time, he went from everything is beautiful, the flowers themselves are opening up to greet Rama, to, whoa, his life, just that fast, his life changed. And that also happens to us. Then how do we deal with that? So now this is he's in and out of consciousness. And when he comes back, he looks at her and she's still disgusted and still claiming that he's an impotent Kshatriya and an impotent king if he cannot keep his word. You're useless. So this happens on and on throughout the night. Finally, Vashista comes because it's getting to be early morning and things have to start taking place. And he comes in and he sees what's happening and he gathers the information. So then he goes to get Rama. And Rama is getting ready for the coronation. And he says, you need to go to the sulking room with Kaikeyi and your father. So Rama goes in there and he sees his father down on the ground, basically just in a terrible state. And he sees his mother just over in the corner, just with complete disgust all over her face. And he says, what is happening? What's going on? And she says, well, your father made two boons to me years ago, and I called to collect those two boons, and apparently he can't. He cannot fulfill those two boons. And Rama says, well, what are they? And she says, one, that Bharata is to be made king, and two, you are to leave the kingdom and live in the forest and take the dress of an ascetic. And he says, okay, of course, I will fulfill his demand, because at this point, this is his father has made this boon. He has to honor that boon, right? This is this whole thing of course, thank you. I will do this. What a privilege and what an honor to be able to follow the commands of my father, because his word was bond. So when he said that he was going to honor those boons, right, that became law. That became a command. So Ram said, what a privilege that I get to honor this. And I get to fulfill the wishes of my mother. Wow, and Bharata is dearer to me than my own heart. Who better to serve? Thank you, thank you. I will gladly do this. And to me, I think that there's so much in just this little bit of the story. One is that Rama is not affected by gain or loss. Nothing. 1 second, he's going from being crowned king of Ayodhya to the next, he's being sent out with nothing. As opposed to Dasharatha, when he found out that Rama had to leave, he couldn't handle it. And he eventually dies. He dies shortly after Rama leaves, very shortly after Rama leaves. But it's that whole, what Krishna talks to Arjuna about, honor and insult, profit and loss, all this, we think, oh, when life is great and we're gaining and we're doing all this stuff, it's wonderful. When we lose something, suddenly life is horrible and we become miserable and we become petty and we become tyrants. So to Rama, it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing to him. Okay, king or not king, it doesn't matter. So if we get into a bit more of the esoteric part, the symbolism part of it. So Rama had to honor his father's word, but this is where at some point in our sadhana, we have to have discernment. We have to have discrimination. We have to turn our back to the world, so to speak. We have to go into the forest of our sadhana. And by the forest of our sadhana, I'm talking about the forest of our unconscious mind. That is where the forest is, where the demons lurk, right? I don't have to go find a forest and search for demons in the forest. I've got plenty inside my own forest. So at some point in our sadhana, we have to go deep within our forest. And the ascetics that he has to dress as an ascetic, right? This is us with our spiritual practice, with our sadhana. That becomes our clothing. Our sadhana becomes what we wear when we go into battle the demons. Because if I go into battle the demons with worldly knowledge, I'm not going to slay a demon. I'm going to come out with 20 more demons because I've got 20 more desires. But when I go in there clothed with my sadhana, then I can slay those demons. So at some point, we have to leave before we can be crowned king, before the soul can come through and the soul takes complete charge, right? Before we become one with the one, before we become self-realized, at some point we have to go into the forest for battle. And that comes from viveka. That comes from our power of discrimination. And viveka gives birth to vairagya. You cannot have vairagya if you don't have viveka. What can you be non-attached to if you can't discriminate if it's good or bad for you? If you have no discernment, no awareness that something is good or something is bad, you can't have dispassion. You can't have this, I don't want to do it. You can't have that vairagya to it. So viveka gives birth to vairagya. So think about it as shreya versus preya. These are not the first time these words have come up in here. So shreya is things that are good for you. Things that are good for you for your spiritual evolution. Versus preya, things that are pleasurable. Things that are pleasant. Start examining constantly. Is this action shreya or preya? Is this action good for my soul or is it stroking my ego? Is this action burning a desire or feeding a desire? Because behind one desire, there's 20 more lurking. So viveka, which is our power of discrimination, right? That's going to give birth to vairagya. Ask yourself these questions. So the yogis say there's 6 virtues that can cultivate viveka. And the first is shama. And that is the intention to be content, to cultivate contentment in all situations. So we have that as an intention. So think about Rama. What a situation. You go from being king to being cast out of your kingdom with nothing. What situations in your life have you had where you should have chosen contentment? Look back at those and examine those and think about how the situation would have unraveled differently had you been content with whatever the result was or whatever the situation that was arising. But we want what we want. The ego wants the ego wants to be validated. The ego wants things easy. The ego wants to be adored. So we fight it because the soul's going to give us what we need. Whether we choose to learn from it or not in this lifetime, that's up to the ego. But if we don't learn, guess what? We're going to get it this next time. Learn now, learn later. If you learn later, it's just like with a credit card, right? Pay now, pay later. You pay later, you pay interest. Might as well just learn now. So you have this. So start examining every situation. And when you feel that little start to lift up in you, you feel that little mantara starting to surge inside of you. Pause, reflect, and then ask, what will the situation look like if I have this intention to remain calm? If I have this intention to cultivate tranquility here? It can change the situation drastically. For you, what's going to happen is going to happen. It's just your reaction that's going to make it miserable or not miserable for you. So Dhamma is where you have you're using the senses responsibly. Think about it this way. So think about, say you want to take a hot bath and you have a bottle of wine and you have hot tea, you have some tea there. Using the senses responsibly would be sitting in the bath with a hot cup of tea as opposed to a glass of wine, or eating one cookie as opposed to 12 cookies. So you use moderation, you use the senses sensibly. And that gives you power and that gives you control, right? You go to one of our potlucks, and instead of having 5 helpings of everything, you say, you know what? I'm only going to have 2 today, which is still pretty hearty. But so we want to start reining in the senses a bit, so to speak. Otherwise, they will just have complete control over us. Uparati is that you just naturally start to feel satiated with what you have. You're not actively looking for something else to satiate you. So if you feel satiated with your house that you live in, you're not looking at someone else's house and going, oh, if I had that kind of thing. You feel happy with the car that you have. You feel happy with the peanut butter cookies that you have. You're not looking at Riley's peanut butter cookies and thinking, oh, they're bigger. I would feel happier if I had his peanut butter cookies. So you start to feel naturally satiated with what you have. So think about that, like in regards to, Riley and I were driving yesterday to the market, and we drove by one of the big furniture stores, Cedar Hill, I think it was, and we were talking, and we were like, how can these big furniture stores stay in business? Because how often do people change their furniture? Then you think about it and you're like, I bet there are probably a lot of people that change it on a regular basis because they're not satiated, they're not content with the furniture they have, right? Or we want to live in a new place because we think the windows are going to make us better because the windows are in this place. Or how often do people seasonally change things in their house? Constantly. Yeah. But even then, how long ago was it before you paint it, right? But so start examining the areas in your life where you don't feel satiated. where you don't feel content, where you don't, and ask yourself why. What is it that I think that if I get this new keyboard, then I'm going to be so much happier? Why can't I be happy with this keyboard? Whatever, start examining all of those things in your life, because every desire behind it is lurking, like we just said, 20 more. So titiksha is that you no longer feel like you have to participate in the world. You don't feel drawn to participate in the world. You don't feel drawn to participate in these non-useful directions. You can observe the world. And you observe the world without judgment. You observe the world through compassionate eyes. It doesn't mean in the sense that Kaylee was telling us Thursday about the spay, what is it called? Trap, neuter, release, which is this thing through the Humane Society that you can get a license or something, and then you can trap feral cats, and then you take them in, and then they get neutered or spayed, right, and their ears clipped, and then they get a rabies vaccine, and then they get released to where they were. And I think that's actually wonderful. It's fabulous. So it's not that you're not getting involved, right? You're not getting involved in a way that gets you riled up. You're not in part of this whole being an activist kind of thing. So for this, what a great thing in the sense that you are keeping kittens from being born to another kitten, right? Before the cat is even old enough, right, to do anything. You're keeping them from starving. It's just we were talking and we were telling Kaylee, that is something, get the certification. TYS will pay for that certification, because what a great thing. Just recently, another cat was dumped off at my mom's house. So at one point, there were 17 cats, I think, there that she had somehow managed to get fixed. Somehow, I'm not sure how all of it managed, how she did. She did what she did. I don't know how she can get feral cats to do certain things, but but and now there's this cat that's over at Ed's house that's hanging out that we've been feeding. Kaylee has 3 kittens on her porch that she's feeding. So why wouldn't we want to do something would you prefer to see a kitten starve to death when you could have it taken care of, where they can get a rabies vaccine? What a great opportunity to be able to do something that is humane. That is actually doing something, but you're not in this, you don't feel the need to be involved in the world. You can watch, you can observe, but if there's something that comes up, you do what is necessary. And then Shraddha. Shraddha is that the more practice you do, the more faith you have in your practice. We've said this, and I'm going to say it again. Do not put faith outside of yourself. Do not ask God and heaven to help you. Help yourself. We're not beggars in here. It's not, God, please give me a new car. Inner dweller, give me the strength so I can work so that I can buy a new car. Inner dweller, give me the strength so that I can handle this situation and be patient and tolerant and kind and loving. And then samadhana. Samadhana is we focus on having harmony with our thought, speech, and action. So start examining where you're not harmonious. Why do you say one thing when that's obviously not the way you feel? It's better just to not say anything. Why do you do something with hate in your heart? We must examine where we are not harmonious so that we can create more harmony. And then so this is something that Shivananda says, that these are points that we should be remembered for developing the virtue of vairagya, which goes along with the viveka. So sensual pleasure is momentary, deceptive, illusory, and imaginary. I like Swami Shivananda too, because he's like Swamiji. They just don't mince words. They're not trying to sugarcoat anything. And sensual pleasure is anything that pleases the senses. Food, right? Sex, anything that pleases the senses. A mustard seed of pleasure is mixed with a mountain of pain. Mm-hmm. That grabs you right in the gut, right? And it may not even be pain that we even see in this lifetime, right? So we have this mustard seed of pleasure that goes back to that praya. Whew, yikes. Enjoyment cannot bring about the satisfaction of a desire. On the contrary, it makes the mind more restless after enjoyment through intense craving. So we have an enjoyment and then we want more. It's like the person who goes to, one holiday and then they go to 20 more holidays trying to better that last holiday because that perceived perfect holiday wasn't enough. That perceived perfect party wasn't enough. They want 20 more parties. And then suddenly it's just this constantly behind it, going. Sensual pleasure is an enemy of Brahma Jnana. So sensual pleasure is an enemy of the knowledge of Brahman. That's another they're all powerful, but some of these, wow. Sensual pleasure is the cause of birth and death. This body is a mass of flesh, bone, and filth. Place the fruits of self-realization or life before the mind and the soul or Brahman, or the eternal, such as immortality, eternal bliss, supreme peace, and infinite knowledge. Okay.